allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Can you make sure that your phones are on silent or turned off, please? I think we're going to get started with the presentations, right? But we're making a little switch.
Yes, we have three presentations this evening. I'd first like to introduce Mr. Carter, the middle high school assistant principal. He's going to introduce our first presenters.
So I'd like to introduce Mr. and Mrs. Zach, who have been doing amazing work with our kiddos. I was able to see the student pitch competition that they set up with our students, and they're here to show us their amazing work.
I'm Ryan Zach. I teach business and technology education in the high school.
Nicole Zach, art in high school as well. So we're here to talk about our student pitch competition that we brought 4 students to this year. We spoke last year. Last year was our first year with the student pitch competition, and we had some success this year as well, and we'd like to share that with you. So the competition itself is sponsored by the Wayne Economic Development Corporation. There is two. There are 2 things that are happening on the same night. So there's a student pitch competition, and then there's also an adult pitch competition. The grand prize for the student pitch competition is $1,500, and the adult pitch competition is $20,000. It is for Wayne County residents, the adult pitch, and the student pitch is any school district in Wayne County or students that live in Wayne County.
So this year we logged approximately 22 hours in September and October between 2:30 and 5:30 p.m. We were able to look at all students' submissions and hone in on their business concepts, and then really dive into a lot of the the inner workings of a business. We looked at how their concept would evolve from ideation to iteration. We looked at who their target markets were, what kind of business model. Did they have a brick and mortar store? Did they want to take advantage of e-commerce? We also looked at completing a SWOT analysis. We looked at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and then standing apart from the competition. What would give them a superior advantage to competitor that's already in the field or another emerging business. And then we looked at team aspects. Every business model and business their entrepreneurial ideas would have different team management skills. Then of course, how are we going to implement it? We had to look at not only the startup, but then how would the business succeed over the course of a 3-year span, and then diving deeper into each of those fashions to have a pretty comprehensive, not just video presentation, but a financial presentation, as all the students' submissions were put through a panel of judges and judged on a variety of criteria. So our Amanda Brathen and Madison Lazinski won first place. They won the grand prize of $1,500, and they are juniors, correct? No, I think you had. I'm like, I swear they are sophomores.
They're sophomores. My apologies.
Okay. And then Julia Dates, she tied for second place with Mia Ennis. Both ladies brought home $1,000 each. So again, for 2 years in a row, we swept the competition, placing first, second, and third. It was really refreshing at the event, being approached by the CEO and being commended on the students' graphical presentations. You're going to see firsthand the skills that Madison and Amanda brought into their video presentation, but then also having that complemented with the financial prowess of their business plans. They were really commended on how thorough each of their business plans were for the 3 years, and the CEO had even remarked that they were on par and surpassed some of the adults that were competing that night. Surpassed their financial plans. So that was kind of nice to hear that they had that kind of a rigor involved to them.
Julia's comes up pretty quick on the next one. Hers was School Swag. It was a business in which she would offer services and bring a school store to different school districts in our county, and then from there she would reach out into other counties. So our school specifically does not have a school store, but she would be kind of the head person to start a school store, and then she would give a list of different things that you would need for your school store. That might be in a physical room, that might be t-shirt orders, that might be different websites, things like that she could bring in. And from there, then she would go on to another school district, kind of teach the school where and how to start that store, and then move on to the next one. So tonight you're going to be seeing the first place, Nostalgia Energy, which is Amanda and Madison's, where we just saw their picture. We'll be looking into their business and actually watching the video. I just want to make sure that you saw Julia and what hers was. Mia Ennis, she tied again with Julia for second place. She brought home $1,000. She's a junior at Red Creek. She is new to our school district, and we were really impressed with what she brought to the table. Her concept is called Earth's Puzzle. It was kind of a concept where you would have more community service, and as when you were doing these community service items, things like donating coats and things to the shelters, or food, or you went to a park and you picked up trash. Every time you would do something, you would post publicly, and then that would be shared. You would get a necklace, a small puzzle piece as part of Earth's Puzzle, and then from there she would help by promoting social media and showing how to increase the ways that you could help our Earth, and she would also sell her merchandise, and that would be her profit there.
So we had a little bit of a different approach this year to last year. Last year being the first attempt at this, we utilized students that had already completed the digital portion to an extent. In Nicole's Shark Tank project that my career in finance class and then her digital media class undertook the year prior, we pulled student submissions from there that were really strong. This year what we did was we tried to have a more interdisciplinary approach. Madison and Amanda were the first place winners last year in that competition and had a really strong product already to work with. And then, Mia had a really good grasp on computer integrated manufacturing concepts, how to use a vinyl graphic cutter, how to use a laser engraver, and some of those 21st century manufacturing tools that we're pushing to have students utilize while they're here to be ready for the job force. So she was really easy to work with in terms of getting an ideation and then making it a tangible business that could be up and running with with a modicum of effort. And then Julia's a very active business club member. She got a lot of entrepreneurial interests. She's heavily involved with with Yearbook Club and several other clubs. So she had this idea and was very easy to turn that again into a tangible product that also gives us benefits as well as a district. And the website that she made could easily be adapted to make a digital store for us. And then flyers were posted around the high school that offering any student that wanted to join. And then this year in total there were 6 submissions. There was submissions from Marion and then Clyde Savannah as well. So they did have some competition, more so this year, so it seems to be a growing trend in the Wayne County area. So looking forward to see next year if there's even more schools that compete the rigor against. And then Amanda and Madison, you can see snapshots here from both their digital media presentation on the left. They designed each one of those cans, came up with a concept for them, different flavors, and then in the center you see the snapshot of all the different financial components of their business. What various income streams they would have, what their operating expenses were, and then trying to make sure that their business moved forward to a point of profit within the first year, and then expanded at a rate of 10 to 15% for each year following.
And that's why we worked so well together in this, was because the middle column, the middle image, hurts to look at. So I helped with the video portion and then the business concept in the beginning. We're going to watch now the video that was presented at the
Hi, my name is Amanda.
My name is Madison Lisinski, and we are the founders and owners of Nostalgia Energy.
Our company creates safe, non-addictive, and affordable energy drinks. Here's our logo. Our slogan is Nostalgia. Sip your feelings. This is your brain. Nostalgia-related activities mainly happen in the hippocampus, ventral striatum, and the substantia nigra ventral tegmental area in the brain.
What is nostalgia? Nostalgia is an emotion that involves a past feeling, either good or bad. The emotion is normally triggered by a familiar smell, sound, taste, or keepsake. When taking a sip of our drink, you shall feel a certain nostalgic feeling from the flavor of our drink relating to the feeling set on the can. This feeling will last for some time and overall brighten your mood.
Some of our most popular flavors are pineapple coconut with the feeling of a warm summer day sitting in a hammock by the water with the breeze in your hair and the birds chirping, ginger honey with the feeling of Christmas morning, and donuts and coffee with the feeling of waking up and realizing you have more time to sleep before your alarm goes off.
Our delicious flavored drinks contain ginseng, a natural energy boosting herbal supplement.
Nostalgia Energy's target market is ages 10 to 17 years old. This group thrives on the need for energy for school, extracurriculars, social events, late night homework, and everything else that's wrapped up into the life of a teenager.
Our can designs look sophisticated yet simple, just like our ingredients. We truly pride ourselves in having few chemicals and having more beneficial ingredients. As you might notice, all of our cans have flavor statements on them. The statement will relate to experiences with our target market, and this will also provide the nostalgic feeling.
The concept of our drink will attract the eyes of parents due to the safe nature of our product compared to the other competing products. All of our cans are going to be $3.99. Our boxes will be $17.59.
Our marketing strategy would involve bringing our drink concept to local farmer markets to gain interest and get customer feedback. Once we have tested our product, our next step would be to sell in local stores.
We would approach our local retailers in person and bring samples. If approved, we would then be able to sell our product in stores and holding product tasting events.
Depending on how the product sold, we would then reach out to national retailers with the goal of pitching our product in person and also being able to bring samples for tasting. This is the image of our tastings. We will have a QR code that will direct our customers to our website for order.
Our goal in 2 years is to expand to school districts and sell them in vending machines. Our school personally will only allow students to purchase drinks during personal lunch periods or before school. The only drink you're allowed to purchase is water.
That is where our product will come in. Our product will provide an energy drink that is completely safe, non-addictive, healthy, and can give you the boost you need without the harmful additives.
Some of our strengths is that our drink is an emotional new drink with an exciting factor making each person feel emotions as they drink. Our weaknesses is that we are a new and upcoming brand and sales will be slow when starting out. Some opportunities are new flavors, items, and ideas, and overall to be a widely known and a successful brand. And we are hoping to expand to different editions such as For the Parents edition with flavors like dark violet berry with the statement of when you get a babysitter. Another flavor like zesty grapefruit with the statement of when you get a raise.
These will push our target markets to 18 to 40. Our competition is other competing energy drinks such as Monster, Red Bull, Rockstar, etc. These energy drinks already have a huge name and are very popular. It will be very hard to reel in customers that are used to consuming other energy drinks.
Last year in grade 9, we were in a class called Digital Media. In Digital Media, we were part of a Shark Tank game, which is where we created Nostalgia Energy.
Thank you for taking your time to watch and learn about mine and Amanda's business, Nostalgia Energy.
Okay, it was fantastic. Yeah, that was really good.
So really quick to finish up, programs we used in the video, we used a variety of different media that you saw there. A lot of that was Canva images that were created with with Pixabay, stock images and videos, Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Sheets, and we also used Adobe Suite, which we specifically was Premiere and Adobe Illustrator. Hi, Julia. Julia just came from a bowling meet and soda, so thank you very much for coming. So to finish out our presentation on November 15th, our first stop was dinner at Cross Park Family Restaurant. We brought all the students together and had dinner. We were served by this place. This really cool.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
Which is awesome. This small school.
Yes, to Emilio, Susie. She's gonna go here, that way she doesn't run into.
Her name is Susie. From there, we went to Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES, where we met my family, friends, and our high school assistant principal. This happens to me all the time. There it is.
competition. It was great for the students to be able to watch live the 5-minute video pitches from adults that were all competing in the moment for the grand prize of $20,000. They were able to watch live as somebody had that giant billboard check written out for them. And the products and services, they weren't next startups that were Silicon Valley. They were everyday products and services that we experience here. The person that actually won offers a handyman service right out the back of their vehicle. They started in March and made $75,000 in revenue for themselves just starting out in year one. So some of the other presentations were a mobile notary, and there was a digital media presentation, and then just again seeing that time factor of you've got 5 minutes, give that elevator speech. What are the highlights of it? And again, that wow factor.
Given that we had 3 top place winners, Red Creek also brought home a $1,000 grant. We are unsure right now how we're going to spend that $1,000. We got it last year as well, so it is very nice to get that to come in. And that was because we had three prizes that were on the top 10 list.
So the day after the competition, Senior Nate Holmes offered to write an article about it. He placed 3rd in the competition last year and kind of wanted to pay it forward, talking about the success of the program. So he wrote a really nicely worded article here, just kind of highlighting the program, what it does, and how it benefits students and potentially future entrepreneurs right here in Wayne County. I did also forward this out to public relations, and we're looking to hopefully get this posted out on social media soon to kind of spread that awareness. We also had an article that Dan DeRocha wrote in the Lakeshore News as well. So that was nice to walk by the gym doors and see the article, because I don't like the Lakeshore, but it was there. Great article written by him. Julia, do you want to say a few words now that you're here? Okay. You talk about your experience and.
Honestly, this was such a great opportunity for me to get to experience. It really taught me a lot of business skills that I didn't think I would ever learn. And a lot of things that you just don't really think of, like the different financial aspects, the different audiences that you want to kind of reach out to when you're looking to start a business. And honestly, I hope that more kids at our school get to experience this or something similar to it, because honestly, even if you're not going into something business related in your future, it's a good skill. There's good skills to know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions or anything?
Oh, sorry. Julia just mentioned that she hopes that more students, I forgot exactly what you said, like get involved or want to experience it. So how, like, do you select students, or do students come to you and say, I want to participate?
So last year we selected students from our digital media class, given that they had already kind of taken at least, I would say, halfway into what the competition was looking for. Also, it was our first year last year, so we weren't quite sure what exactly we were going to do. This year, I posted flyers around the high school trying to get some student interest. And I also, we kind of expanded our pool a little bit. The downfall is, I guess, manpower on our end. When we said we were working 22 hours, it was from September, October, and also in September there are a lot of things starting out, and also, the jitters of the new school year. So really getting students to be able to stay with us during those times. Fall sports are starting as well. That was difficult, and I think between the two of us, we could probably have maybe 3 to 4 submissions. We tried, I think 4. I think this year we tried for 4, and three groups, or Amanda and Madison, and then 2 other students came forth, and they were interested in participating. So we chose them. But we did also post it to see if anyone else was interested.
Great, thank you.
I just had a question. Is 2 years ago the first year that this was implemented?
Yes, last year was the first year that it was implemented.
So the adult competition as well, or just?
Nope, the 5 years. 5 years for the adult, and then the student pitch started last year.
Okay, I was just wondering why more schools don't take advantage of it.
I know, right?
So I didn't know if
now
it was just an
Savannah and
understanding
Marion
and,
are new in the group, and they did win special prizes, I believe. It was a special prize for something that would implement the county as a benefit for the county. So
Okay.
they won something like that. I think the 2 submissions from Maine and Marion, and then 1 from Clyde.
Okay.
So maybe next year we'll see more competition, which we're ready for.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that you keep sweeping, so I think it's
Very
fine.
confident about what we're so far, so,
Thank you.
So I work at SUNY Oswego, and the students do a very similar program to this, and a lot of our alumni work with the students as mentors.
Mhm.
So knowing that this is only the second year, I'm wondering if you've thought about in the future trying to develop that out and maybe engaging alumni from our school or business members in the area. It might be a cool opportunity to connect them back with some new students.
yeah, that's a great idea, something to look forward for next year. Yes,
This is awesome.
Yeah, great job.
You guys said that you got that $1,000 last year too.
Yep.
Did you guys use those dollars? What'd you use them
Yep,
for?
so we bought, one of the big, downfalls that we had last year is we were recording on a phone, but the phone, we didn't have any tripods or any way of actually recording. That was a decent, not kind of shaky, so our videos last year weren't as high quality. This year we got a green backdrop, so we were able to do some more digital editing with Mina's work. We were able to get the tripods. We also have a script reader, so that way the students can actually read what's on the screen instead of memorizing, which was really beneficial. And we also bought studio lights and then a microphone with that as well.
That's fantastic.
Yes.
That's awesome.
So now technically we have all of the equipment that we need, so now we're kind of figuring out what we can use that $1,000.
That's awesome. Question for Julia. So when you said that this was great opportunity and it's very different, like kind of a real life experience as opposed to sitting in a classroom, right? So did you like talk about it with your friends at all? And like what was their thoughts and opinions on it?
My friends were kind of like, wait, really? Like, that's something that you're doing? Like, they're kind of shocked about that. I was like putting in time and effort to do that.
Yeah, look at what you came out with though, right?
Yeah.
It's a big time commitment, I will say.
Mhm.
Any extra spare minutes you have, you're working on that, but it's well worth it,
Do you think any of them were like, oh, that would have been cool to do, maybe it's something I should have done?
definitely.
All right, cool.
And then I will bring up, like last year in my digital media class, I'll bring up again when we do the Shark Tank project, this year's winners, and then I'll say their names, and the students will be like, oh yeah, I remember, she came home, she had $1,000. So it's like that word of mouth, and that'll continue growing.
That's awesome.
As the program goes on.
Nicely done, guys.
Yeah, great
Thank
job.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Mr. Welcher is going to give us a quick overview, brief overview of the fall athletic season that has come to conclusion at this point, so he'll be getting logged in here, but you should have a copy of his documents.
Already with you?
Thank you. Julia, stay in.
We'll make sure that she signs in. Julia, do you need to sign in for class?
Yeah.
How did bowling go? We lost. So you know you're on camera. You're answering Julian's questions. Thank you. So just, you're gonna put your name. Oh, you can use that.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter. So you can put your name here, and then yes, that you're a resident, and no, you don't want to spell the town school. Thank you.
All right, I am Mr. Welcher, I'm the athletic director here at Redbury. None of our students won any money in fall athletics, but we did win some games, so we learned a lot. But nobody won any cash prizes, but it's always next year. So thank you for your time. This will be brief. It's just a wrap up of our seasons and some of the awards that our athletes were given. So we will start with basically just an overview of our participation. Fall's kind of a light season, which was good for me because it was my first season being the athletic director here. Very familiar with how everything went. but it was nice to kind of start off for me with kind of the lightest in teams. It's a small number of teams compared to winter. We have varsity golf, varsity boys soccer, varsity girls soccer, varsity boys and girls cross country, and for the first time in 10 years we fielded a JV boys and girls soccer team. So that was a huge bonus for the soccer programs in developing our players and getting ready for next year. Modified boys and girls, plenty of kids, and modified cross country, we had 7. We have a couple nice pictures there of our JV soccer team and some of our cross country runners. One of the coolest things about being the athletic director now is I always used to go to events and I would kind of be like, is people looking at me why I'm here? It's kind of strange that Vice Welcher here, and now I have an excuse, I'm the athletic director. So I love, every sport kind of has a different feel to it and a different, kids get different things out of different sports, and it's really nice to kind of go across the board to golf, which is so completely different than soccer, and then cross country is wonderful. But they're all just so very different, and it's nice to be able to go see all those different things. Varsity boys soccer, overall record is 7-9-1. Our team awards, which we give out at our banquets at the end of the year, those are recommended by the coaches. Tyler Cooper was our MVP, and Niall Wynn won the coaches award. Wayne County League awards, Tyler Cooper made first team, Adam Dahl made second team, and Ethan Hanford made third team. By the end of the season, as some of the parents know, the boys were sick, injured, dinged up, banged up, something was sore. So the season didn't really end like we all kind of wanted it to, but injuries and sick illness just really caught up with us. They lost in the first round of sectionals to SOTUS. Next, we'll go on a quick wrap up of, let me go back to this picture. This is from our homecoming night. This is Cincinnatus. In the middle there is Coach Hartley. So Coach Hartley's son-in-law is the coach for Cincinnatus, so we've developed a relationship with that school, so they come up here and play. They are a very, very strong D school. I believe they won sectionals last year and came close to winning it this year. So it's a real family event, and we were able to get all the boys together and Hartley's family and some old coaches together for this great photo. It was a great night, very well played game. We did lose, but we played them very, very close to that game, and that was a very solid team that we played that night. Girls soccer, final record of 8-10. Some team awards. Abigail Sanzada, senior captain, was our MVP, and Bethany Keefe won the coaches award. Some Wayne County League awards. Abby Sanzada made first team, Bethany Keefe second team, Marley Sharkey, second team, and Brooke won all tournament team. There's our girls on senior night. I followed my GPS and ended up in like a quarry. I didn't even know where enough. I had to turn around and find. That was the girls' final game of the year. They lost to Holly, which was seeded number 1. They ended up winning sectionals and going to the state final 4, I believe. So solid team, and the girls had a wonderful season. Bottom right, some amateur photography from me. Cross country, I put these two together because it's almost like they're a family, those boys and girls team. They spend so much time together. That's a really cool thing about cross country, and that's why they're on the same page. The girls had a great season, 12-7. Boys went 6-14. Some boys teams award. Ethan Haas was the MVP, and Noah Gingrich won the coaches award. Girls team awards, Gwenna Haas, who's with us tonight, sorry to embarrass you, Gwenna, was our MVP, and Alyssa Perkins won the coaches award. Some league awards, Gwenna was a second team all-star and won a sectional shield, and Ethan Haas was a third team all-star. Some pictures there, we have Alyssa there from senior night, and bottom right is league championships, which were in North Rose. Great event there. Varsity golf, Mr. Pitts and the guys went 7-5. Our team MVP was Ty Ellis. Our coaches award went to Colton James. Ty Ellis was first team and co-player of the year in Wayne County. He had a great season. Colton James was the second team all-star, and Ty Ellis qualified for sectionals at league championships. So he will be, so now golf sectionals are in the spring, so he has got to kind of hang out and wait, and he'll start working and training, and they do sectionals in the spring after taking a long break after the fall season is over.
Yay.
Yes. Some more pictures. There's the guys at the golf course, somewhere I always like to be. Some thank yous. This is a little bit of an outdated one. I forgot a couple of people, so I'll just add them. First, thank you to the fans, thank you to coaches, parents. league coordinators, transportation department, administrative team, and the Board of Education to thank you all. And the biggest thank you is going to go to our athletes. Most of you guys are parents of athletes. You will be, I'm assuming, sometime this fall. It is a ton of time and a ton of work that these kids put into this stuff. I can't tell you how many times in just my short tenure here where I've gotten a compliment on our team's behavior, our facilities here, how welcoming it is here, and how well behaved our children are. It's almost every single time I hear something from an official or from another coach, and I'm not just saying that. We got compliments Monday night from the referees. Kids don't always hear compliments, so I try to remind them of that as much as I possibly can, because usually when you go up to a kid, they're like, oh, what did I do now? So I just wanted to say thank you to the kids. They represent the school very, very well, and they made my job easy in the fall, and hopefully they continue to do that forever. So, any questions?
What's a sectional shield?
Ooh, you had to ask me that. If they finish in the top top 20, they get a sectional shield. It's just basically a little, it's like a letter.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah, so it's top
congratulations.
20.
Yeah.
And Gwen finished 9th, I believe. 18th, sorry.
Just
Thought they had a little bit.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank
Mr. Welcher. Quick transition here from athletics. Mrs. Davini will get her PowerPoint up for an academic data update. So you should have seen as board members 2 documents. One is a lengthy, comprehensive data report that includes a lot of compiled data at all the grade levels, from the elementary all the way through the high school. It includes some of our formative data, which would be our Regents exams and our 3 through 8 state assessments, graduation rates, and then the snapshot, which would be the shorter presentation that Mrs. Davini will present today. Really just pulls out a sampling of that. Part of this presentation really is designed to show the board and the community the scope of which that we collect data at this point. We use a number of multiple measures to collect student data, both on growth and achievement, and we use a number of programs, not just those formative state assessments that everybody really knows and has come to understand. That paints only a small picture of who a student is as an academic. And what you would see in this is some of our regular progress monitoring data as well. And to paint a much more broad picture of who these students are as academic students. And one of the things that I think Mrs. Davini and I have really talked about with our leadership team is, being that we're all, many of us are kind of new into some of these roles and positions, this is really an outstanding jumping off point for us as a leadership team, with our teachers, with our coaches. It gives everybody a really informed baseline of what is going on academically, both at the student level and at the program level, and Jen's gonna talk about that, and the difference of what those 2 things are. So I'm proud to have Jen and our leadership team present this information. But again, I look at it as a baseline, or as a starting point for where we are at this point academically, and using this data to inform where we're going to go going forward. So I'll turn this over to Jen.
If you would, open your district provided bottle of water and take a nice drink. You'll notice a hint of nostalgia feeling of wah, 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 fall data report. I have a little flashback from standing here last year to share with you some data. Last year, for those of you who are on the board, I stood here in front of you in September and October and presented some historical data. However, ones who need to be analyzing our data. Our leadership teams, our instructional teams need to be the ones doing that work. So we have really been focused this fall on engaging our staff in that work, trying to drive a data-driven culture. So as part of my interview process for this position, Matt asked me to come prepared with an instructional vision. So all of my work with our leadership team around this and with our instructional coaches is rooted in this idea of Red Creek Rising. So last fall, when our athletic teams were doing really well, there was this kind of grassroots initiative from our community about the creek is rising. And that really stuck with me as an alum, as a resident, that our community really gathered behind that idea. So all of our work with our coaches is really behind that. How can we move our district forward to improve outcomes and equitable outcomes and opportunities for our students together? So at the core of that is using data to drive those decisions. So what you have in front of you, and when I think about how much data we went through last year compared to what is in this book for you all tonight, I think last year we did an hour-long presentation, so if we were to go page by page through this, maybe we'd be out by midnight. So what I'll give you is just kind of a breakdown so you can analyze and process what's in front of you. So you have for each grade level a snapshot of, here's a portrait of the first grade. It includes both our demographic data for that cohort as well as some of their performance and diagnostic assessment data. It also includes growth goals. I'll talk a little more about that process with our staff. And then following the snapshots for each of the cohorts is a section about subgroup performance. That was an area we focused in on last year, that we're seeing inequitable outcomes for various groups of our students. So there's an update on that. There also are a couple of charts in there of grade level performance over time. So those reports really feed our work about curriculum. So when we look at students, it helps to inform what we're doing with instruction and other supports that they need. But when we're looking at the same fifth grade year over year over year, that drives our work around curriculum. And then there is some Regents performance data in there for you as well. And in your printed out copy, there is an updated version of the graduation data that's much easier to read. I sorted that a little differently so you can read that better. So with that, as Matt mentioned, we're really trying to get to this place of using multiple measures. So if you only have one circle of data that you're looking at, the purpose for data for us is to really use that as evidence to drive our next steps. So if we are in the blue circle and that's the only set of data we have, we might assume, okay, we need to work on A, B, and C. But if A, B, and C are down here, we're missing the mark on what it is that our students need. So in this portrait of a student or portrait of a grade level, what we're looking at are all of these pieces together to try to find this box in here in the middle of what it is that those students need and how we meet those needs for them. So we're trying to be scientists about that and be as purposeful and intentional in identifying what it is that our students need, and then coming at those needs from every angle to support not only our staff in meeting those needs, but our students in rising to that occasion as well. So let's focus in on the current fifth grade cohort. So I'll just walk you through that snapshot, so that way you can, when you're having a hard time sleeping at night, dive into some of that data. So in your demographics section, this tells you our current section of fifth grade has 60 students, 29 of them are female, 31 are male. There is the breakdown of subgroups by race. 7 of those 60 students are students with an IEP. This does not include 504 plans. Of those students, 55% are considered economically disadvantaged. And to date, so far this year, there's a 6.8% absentee rate. So on any given day, the average rate so far is that 6.8% of them have been absent from school. You'll notice when you look at the pre-K, that's a little higher because Barrett Divinity can't seem to keep the germs out of them. So we'll give Barrett the blame for the pre-K attendance data. Alright, so then it goes into our reading data. So we are using, again, multiple measures to look at performance here. So DIBBLES is our initial screener to identify student needs. Then students also are completing an iReady diagnostic, which really hones in on what skills students need support with. The same is true of FastBridge, again, homing in on those skills that students need. And then for this cohort of students, they did complete the New York State exams in the spring. So for us, again, where we're looking at some of those, honing in on all of those circles, we're looking for correlation among essentially the scores of the same color. Again, 4 different exams, they're 4 different assessments, they're looking at different things, but we're looking for correlation between that data to support whatever one of those assessments is telling us that are the needs of those students. So the same thing under math, students complete the iReady math diagnostic. Again, it reports out what skills students need support on, what their next steps are. The same is true of FastBridge math, and then their math state test assessments as well. We also this year have jumped back into giving the My Sabers screener, which is a social emotional learning. So some of you may have received reports on those already from your parent or from your regarding your child, or you might be receiving those soon. It really is where students are self-indicating that I feel anxious at certain times, or I feel impulsive at certain times. So it's giving us a little bit more of that picture of the whole child. So for our teams, let me give you these two. So then you also have the same cohort data over time. So these are the New York State assessments. So for this cohort of students who's in 5th grade, you see how many of them scored a 1, 2, 3, or 4 at 3rd grade versus 4th grade. So in this ranking, a 4 is mastery. So again, those colors I tried to match the whole way through. So a 4 is mastery, a 3 is meeting expectations, a 2, or the yellow, is working toward that, and then a red is they have not met expectations yet. So you can see for this cohort, between 3rd grade and 4th grade, more students scored a 1, the lowest score possible. So we saw a decline in their performance from 3rd grade to 4th grade. Everyone follow that?
Mm-hmm.
Non-teacher friends? Okay. The same is true here in math. So again, 3rd grade data to 4th grade data. We see students who were 4s earning the top score, fewer students now in 4th grade earning that top score. So then for our teachers, the work becomes, when we analyze this, what does this mean? What is the cause of this shift? And then they go back and look at some of these where it focuses in on more of the skills, and they can compare the skill deficits to the standards and their regular curriculum to try to pinpoint, again with all of those circles, pinpoint exactly what the needs of those students are. So as you peruse leisurely through your data manual, there are a couple of celebrations that we want to highlight for you. So from this work, our elementary school AIS model has shifted this year to be truly an all-hands-on-deck model. So every 6 weeks, those grade level teams and the interventionists are meeting together, they're reviewing student data and progress monitoring and setting specific growth goals for each student. They're coming back together after 6 weeks to say, all right, so Matt met his goal, he needs to move to a different group now, or Matt showed some growth but needs a little bit more time working on this goal. So they have been very data driven. It has come at them fast and furious to jump into doing that data driven work, but they have rolled with it really well as teams, and their conversations and collaborations around that are really very impressive. They are working really, really hard to analyze the data. At Math 8, a huge shout out to Mrs. Malgett, who is our 8th grade math teacher. So her students in 8th grade, there were 77% of the students are deemed proficient. So they scored a 3 or a 4 on the 8th grade math assessment. That same cohort of students, when they were in 7th grade, 33% of them or a 3 or a 4. So she more than doubled the proficiency numbers in a single year. Now she will tell you that that is the work of her team before her prepping and teaching those skills, but we cannot deny the impact of a very active and data-driven teacher in honing in on what her students need in her classroom. So if you see Mrs. Malka, give her a big pat on the back for that. Also in U.S. history, so this was the first year of the new U.S. history Regents exam. We had over 90% passing rate on that, with just under 18% of students scoring mastery. So every time those Regents exams shift, the focus and the format shifts, so teachers and students always get really anxious. And this test, the U.S. history exam, was very unique in that the state did not give many models ahead of time for our teachers to be able to prep with the students about that. So this U.S. history is taught by Maggie Emerson, who was a new hire to us last year as well. So if you see her again, give a big pat on the back. English 11 had our highest mastery rate, so mastery is scoring an 85% or above. So English 11 was the highest for that. And at 3rd grade, we're seeing our students, their overall percentage of proficiency, so scoring 3 and 4, was 69%. So our students are coming in to 3rd grade, scoring well, they're leaving for the high school, scoring at a solid proficiency level. So when we look at that, last year you may remember hearing about a program evaluation. There was a presentation this spring, I think, about that. One of the recommendations of that was to look at our curriculum and potentially explore new curriculum. When I look at the fidelity with which our math curriculum is taught across grade levels and see, okay, 69% of our students are meeting the mark, that says perhaps this isn't a curriculum problem. We can go do some more support with our AIS programming, we can hone in on certain skills at other grade levels, but maybe we don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater there just yet. And then the other piece in there too is the potential for significant improvement. So when you flip through each of those grade level cohorts, if you focus in on the iReady data, you'll see that that gives a breakdown of 1 grade level below, or 2 or 3 below. And our percentages at many grade levels are largest in that 1 below mark. So when we do a cross comparison of those same students, so again, student Matt Van Orman in 4th grade got a 3 on his state assessment, but iReady says that he is 1 grade level below. So that, the correlation there is that he maybe was a low 3. At the end of 3rd grade, he met the expectations. Now that he's in 4th grade, he's a little low in some of those skills. So if we do a little bit of targeted instruction on those skills, we get him back to grade level, he stays there, and then continues to grow from there. So again, looking at all of those data points, we can have those really targeted conversations and supports so that Mr. Van Orman can get through 4th grade. Yeah. So again, some other pieces that we need to look at now, mysteries that we have not necessarily solved from that data analysis. We're diving into priority standards work. So that means of all of the standards that the state says that we have to teach, all of the curriculum that the state says that we have to teach, which pieces are the most important? So at 5th grade, which skills are most important for students to master going forward into 6th grade and 7th and beyond? Which standards are most frequently assessed? Are we teaching those priority standards? Do we know when we're teaching them? Do we know how we're teaching them? So one of the really unique things that we have seen, again, through this process, so here we looked at the drop in student performance from 3rd grade to 4th grade. In doing priority standard analysis at 4th grade, there are 7 modules or units for math. Typically, the grade level gets through the first 5 modules before the state assessment, and then they do module 6 after the state assessment, and don't often make it to module 7 at the end. However, when we did priority standard analysis, 18% of the test questions year over year are covered in module 7 that has never been taught Now, if you're only looking at the standards, those same standards from Module 7 are also taught in Module 3. So without doing a deep dive, you can say, okay, great, they're covered in 3, so it's not really important that I get to 7 before the state assessment. But they're taught in a different context in Module 7. So looking at this data with the 4th grade team, immediately they're saying, all right, we're going to change this, we're adjusting, we've got to get this in. So again, having that data-driven culture allows us to not just assume, oh, well, the kids don't know geometry, or the kids don't know this, it's COVID. It allows us to be very purposeful with determining what those root causes are for shifts in our data, and making sure that we either discontinue practices that aren't helping us or continue and grow practices that are helping us. So all of our grade levels right now are working on priority standard analysis through our lead teachers with our coaches' support. Some other pieces that are coming our way. So we did, this year was our first year of new assessments at grades 3 through 8. So new assessments being on our shifted, updated Common Core standards, which are now the next gen learning standards. At the high school this year, there are going to be a couple of new Regents exams. So Algebra 1 and Living Environment will have new Regents exams this year. Again, very few models have come out from the state on what those new exams will look like. And then high school social studies, again, last year was the first year of US history, and global is a relatively new exam for them as well. As we talked about last year, we're still needing to do some work on subgroup performance. So there is a lot of disparity and inequitable outcome between students of varying races, economically disadvantaged versus not, students with disabilities versus general education students. And a lot of those pieces are built into our strategic plan, so it aligns with that work that we'll continue to focus on those. We also, over the last few years, have done a lot of work around the science of reading, especially at the elementary level, and making sure that our core instruction is aligned with the science of reading. So we will start to see the impact of that in our data. And then also, we'll continue to do both of these pieces. So one, tracking cohort progress year over year to identify the needs of students, but then also tracking grade level progress with the standards and the curriculum. So they're two different pieces, and we have to look at both of them. And if we're only looking at one, we're missing the mark, either on our curriculum or on our instructional practices. Hence the reason that my title has both of those pieces, curriculum and instruction, together. So on each of those snapshot pages, you will see growth goals for this year, as well as from some of the other content areas goals as well. So on the October Superintendent Conference Day, all of our teams were presented with much thicker data packets than what you have in front of you, diving into standards and student performance. So as teams, they went through a data analysis protocol to review what they're seeing in there and identify the so what now. Now we've looked at the data, what do we do with it? How do we change what we're doing based on that data? So grade levels or departments then set goals based on that. This month with our lead teachers, we reviewed a little more about what SMART goals are. They're going back to their teams to review their goals to make sure that they're all SMART goals, that they're measurable and attainable. So there may be some updates to some of those goals in there. I know I just received 2 of them today. So then based on that, our coaches, our instructional coaches, come in and meet with each teacher and say, all right, so Mr. Bonanno is working on this goal in living environment. Theirs, I think, is around using certain texts or finding evidence in a text in a science context. So when he's working with his instructional coach, they can help him to embed that in his instruction. So either finding resources for that or teaching students strategies for identifying the evidence in the text. So the coaches are really that day-to-day support to help teachers, one, be focused on their goals and remembering that this is something we committed to as a team, we're working on this, but then also to bring resources and supports for that as well. In January, we will do mid-year diagnostics, so everything on there except for the state assessments We'll do a mid-year run of those to get updates, so then we'll have some in-progress data on how students are growing and performing. And then teams will run through that same data protocol again to say, all right, we said that we wanted to see this growth in our students, and we were going to do steps A, B, and C to make that happen. Did we see the expected growth at mid-year, or did we not? How do we need to adjust if we're not seeing that expected growth? So that will be an ongoing process for them, and then in June, we'll bring that process for the year to a close, reflect on how things went for the year, and then that will drive a great deal of our summer work this year, both around curriculum and instruction. So things that have been happening, again, talking about data, coming at the data from all of those angles. We talked about doing the standards analysis, mapping those priority standards. This again, some of this is follow-up to that program evaluation process that was completed last year for both math and ELA. Again, some of the outcomes from that reflected the need to review and potentially purchase new curriculum. I have said to our lead teachers, I don't want to be the schmuck that stands in front of my boss 5 years from now and says, hey, remember how we spent $200,000 on that curriculum 3 years ago? Turns out we were wrong, we really need this curriculum instead. So by doing this priority standards work, when we review curriculum materials, our staff can be very intentional about making sure that those priority standards are taught well in any option that we're looking at for curriculum. So our teams are continuing to work with WFL BOCES for regional collaboration around those new Regents exams, making sure we're as prepared as possible. So that will continue. Mr. Taylor has morning meetings with each of his teams, so he rotates through in the morning. So he's really focusing on scope and sequence documents, making sure that teachers are keeping pace with where they need to be in their lessons in order to hit all of those priority standards as we go through. We talked a little bit about the instructional coaching, and they will come next month to present to you about their work. They have been a really fabulous addition for building that positive data-driven culture. I think as much as anybody else, they are coming to me looking for data, then taking it back and analyzing it. We're a really great team for that, to make sure that teachers have the data that they need to inform what they're doing day in and day out. So just an absolutely phenomenal resource for us here. And then we talked a little bit about that elementary AIS model and how that is working. And actually next week will be their next round of data collaboration. So our big priorities through using data is to get to a place that we have a guaranteed viable curriculum. So if our entire third grade team shifts, there is a guaranteed viable curriculum that will be consistent from year to year, from classroom to classroom. So if my child is in teacher A's room, and Kim's is in teacher B's room, and Nancy's is in teacher C's room, our students are having the same educational experience from one classroom to the next. A guaranteed viable curriculum allows for that to be the experience of all of our students. And with that, it then means that we don't build gaps in our students when, okay, teacher A didn't really feel strong, comfortable with their skills teaching fractions, so they didn't do as much as teacher B. We don't want that to be the case. We want all of our students to have an equitable experience day in and day out. From this, we'll also be focusing in on research-based high-impact teaching strategies, so rooted in John Hattie's visible learning work. And this again is part of where our coaches come in. They have all been trained in those high-impact teaching strategies and are working to reinforce those in classrooms. So that's really being intentional with how we choose to teach something. So if stand and deliver lecturing makes this much of an impact versus having students engage with the material and teach others makes this much of an impact, we want the bigger bang for our buck. So also with this, continuing to build our MTSS systems, so making sure when students are struggling or when they're needing that enrichment, that they're having those systematic approaches to getting the supports or the enrichment that they need. So again, Mrs. Bybee is in that role this year as our instructional coach / MTSS coordinator, and the systems work and communication and coordination that has come out of the last 3 months with her in that role has far surpassed all of the work that was done last year and the entire year with MTSS. And with that, she also has tier 1 and tier 2 coaches who are all working their tails off to make sure that they're communicating back with staff about student needs and performance and what's being tried to help support students. And then we will continue to grow this culture of being data-driven in our decisions. So gone are the days of saying, well, my gut says that Johnny needs A, B, and C. My gut says that I need a snack, but it doesn't tell me what my students need to inform their learning and their growth. Questions?
All right, I have questions.
Go ahead.
First, I am a data person and I love this, so thank you. I will be the person that will go through this in my free time. So some of this is not great. Most maybe of this is not great. I know some of it's probably attributed to COVID, lots of shifting, lots of changing. We're not gonna see necessarily, you know, huge changes overnight. It's a process, I get that. But what are your goals or what are your thoughts now that you're kinda in the position on how we can get maybe like most of our kids, or what, you know, New York State would deem like a reasonable amount of our kids up to where they should be right now?
So one piece of data that's not included in there for you is regional comparison data. As much as we can all agree that many of these numbers are not great, they are better than many of our BOCES school districts. So that is what we can attribute to the COVID impact, that there are regional dips. However, as Matt talked about when he first started, that work in October with our staff analyzing the data is really from a place of saying, let's all agree, we don't like where we are, so let's plan for where we're headed from here. I don't think many people, certainly Mrs. Malka, would perhaps argue that things are going well in her classroom. I don't think many would say, yep, we've got it all figured out. So it really is being intentional and purposeful that everything we're choosing to do or teach to students is rooted in some sort of data. I think that would be the single most effective or greatest impact on our student performance, is making sure that every instructional strategy we use as we're teaching is rooted in research, and every piece of curriculum that we're teaching is rooted in research.
So I would say, first I would agree 100%. I went through the majority of this data last night. And with each grade level I got to, the pit in my stomach got a little bit bigger, because it's pretty bad. I've been on the board a few years now, and you know, I've sat through some of these presentations, and I've had somebody in your position stand up there and say, you know, this is what we're gonna do, and it's gonna make things better, and you know, we're keep getting years down the road, and we're not seeing that progression at all. I understand you guys are completely new to this. I'm gonna call it a problem. It's not your guys' problem necessarily to have been created. But when we're looking at the percentage of math and reading in all of these grade levels being 60, 70, 80, 90% below grade level, that just floors me. But actually it just makes me sad. It's disheartening. I understand regionally it's potentially the same. I have two questions. One, the data that's in here, when is it from?
When?
Yeah.
In the last, so the demographic data is
So, like,
within the last 2 weeks.
Okay, so like the
Previous
iReady.
data is from June. and iReady is from their September diagnostics. So
Okay,
iReady,
So
FastBridge.
iReady is from September, so that's technically at the beginning of the school year, this is where you're at coming into the new school year. You're starting 4th grade. Are you ready for 4th grade, or are you at 4th grade? And
Right.
Okay. My second question is, as you had mentioned, you brought a bunch of data to us last year, I think it was. Is there any sort of comparison or anything? Is it presented completely different so we can't do comparison to last year's data? Is it possible, or maybe I can find it on,
So you
maybe I
have
can look at it.
in there, if you look at 5th grade,
Uh-huh.
for example, or 6th grade, the page that has the 2 graphs next to each other. So these are the same slides you had last year with
Okay.
1 more year of data tacked onto them
Okay.
for state assessments. I have not done that same comparison with the other data sources at this point. So again, as Matt talked about, we're looking at this as our baseline to say where are we headed from here.
Yeah.
So as you all talked about goals and following up on the strategic plan and wanting to check in on that, part of your role with that is to say at the mid-year point, where are we, what are we seeing, and then ask the questions of the why. So if you expected that you're working on a data-driven culture and that is going to start to move things, and that's not the case, what are you seeing as the reasons for that? If there was a magic wand, somebody would be making a lot of money with that. So we have to really be very scientific with choosing what our steps are with that. I think another big piece to what we're seeing across the country with especially reading data is that focus in education on the pendulum switch. So we become really fixated on whatever we don't like and whatever's not working, that then we swing the pendulum all the other way to get the opposite of what that thing was that we hated and neglect all these important pieces here in the middle. So we have a large group of elementary staff right now engaging in a book study around the knowledge gap and knowledge matters. And the idea behind that is that when we only focus on skills, we are doing a disservice to our students. They need to build their knowledge and exposure to things in the real world, which is what students in a more affluent school district have in their own lives. So some of that feeds into our curriculum. If our curriculum, our core curriculum is skills-based, then at its core, it's faulted in how we are teaching. The same is true of the science of reading research, that there was a shift in education to be around whole language instruction. We didn't put a lot of focus on phonics instruction. So then when science of reading research came out, we said, oh, whole language is bad, 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 phonics, phonics, phonics. And we miss all of the other pieces. The science of reading says phonics is important. It's one of those strands of the reading rope. You can't neglect all of the other pieces. So we're trying to really bring in the pendulum swings to find that middle ground.
Because I think that that's what, in my short time on the board, that I've seen is we're kind of all in on this idea, and I think just in the educational world it tends to happen. It's like, this is the new thing, this is the new research, let's go all in on this, and then you get, like you said, 2 years down the road and you've spent how much money on curriculum, and you're like, oh, I guess that wasn't the best one, there's something new now. And we've got years of kids that we're just kind of, we just aren't quite, we're not ever like actually catching up with them. And
it wasn't long ago that I sat on the other side of that table and we approved the purchase of a new curriculum to the tune of $200,000 that now research has said is not an effective curriculum.
Right. And I do agree. I love this and the data. I'm a data person as well. I think data-driven decisions are good. So I'm really hopeful. But it definitely scared me when I was looking at this data. It scared me a lot.
Okay, so I have one more question. So you talked about the high impact teaching strategies, and looking at kind of what students are responding well to versus not responding well to, or what you're getting, I think you said the biggest bang for your buck. But at the same time, we're trying to have the equitable teaching experience in each classroom. So I guess I'm wondering how you're commingling those two together. So you might have one class that is like full of tactile learners, and that is how they're learning, so that teacher, I'm sure, would then adjust his or her teaching strategies to meet those needs. But say there's a couple really strong auditory learners in that classroom, and this other teacher is teaching to those. So are we looking at those, like historically what certain students are doing well with, to try and put them in cohorts with other students who do well with those teaching methods? You know, do you get what I'm trying to say?
So I would have to yield to Dennis on how those groups are made at the elementary level. Beyond that though, you're referring to differentiation for students. So when they're all in front of me, how am I modifying what I'm doing? High impact teaching strategies from John Hattie's Visible Learning. So he's conducted a meta-analysis study of all of the studies and boiled it down through some crazy data, math people, algorithm to compare apples to apples, the effectiveness of what we do. So for example, it might say that, retention has a negative, quantified to a number, a negative impact on student learning. Whereas teachers having high expectations for their students is among the top 3. Teacher-student relationships is among the top 3 for impact on student learning. Jigsaw, if you remember when you were in school doing a jigsaw, everybody reads the same piece, all the ones read the same part, and then you go back to your group and you share with your group, in part 1 we read this, and someone else says in part 2 we read this. Again, top 5 high impact teaching strategies. So it's the practices within the classroom that they're working on. So those would be the same from group to group. But what you're talking about is more the differentiation for students within there.
Okay, so you're saying we have strategies that we know will strengthen learning in certain areas that we are using across the board in all the classrooms, and then teachers are also.
So the impact of that work comes from our coaches. So every single teacher across our district has their own instructional coach. And so they are meeting every teacher where they are to engage them in that work. So some, especially our first year teachers, are still trying to learn how to just manage their classroom and maintain their schedule and do all the things they need to do. So they're not at that point yet, where other teachers are. A teacher who is doubling proficiency levels is using data and using those high impact teaching strategies. So her coaching is looking different to talk about how do you build thinking and student engagement within your classroom. So that coaching is really personalized to every teacher, and with the goal of getting them all to that place, but everyone is at a different place. If we hammered our new teachers on those high impact teaching strategies, great, but the other pieces that they need as first year teachers would suffer because of that.
Okay.
So personalized support for our teachers.
Could you go back to slide number 7, please? And you had said that students are leaving 3rd grade with a proficiency of 69% and enter high school with the same math at 69%.
Can you just tell me what's the heading of slide 7?
Math.
ELA.
Oh, ELA.
Performance. So what happens in between 3rd and high school?
Just looking for someone to show me what's on slide
I'm not,
7.
that is
You're
what you
on it.
said.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
It is this one?
Yep.
It's this one.
So you said that it's not regarding this slide here. You said they leave
Right,
3rd
so
grade and they enter.
3rd grade, what we see is that they are scoring at a higher proficiency level. It drops at 4th, it drops at 5th, starts to come back up at 6th, up at 7th, up at 8th.
So what happened? What happens? What's happening in the classroom? Why is this happening?
So that is that module 7 discussion that I just told you about.
But that's ELA as well.
So that's math specifically. They are actually tomorrow, 4th grade is doing that same standard analysis with their ELA. I would bet that it is the same thing, saying that we are teaching standards that are not the priority standards. I also would say at 7th and 8th grade, there's longevity of teachers, consistency in those positions that also supports that. So when Mrs. Malka is the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math department chair, she can say, okay, I know in my curriculum, I need to adjust boom, boom, boom here for my students. But I've been teaching that year over year over year to know what adjustments I need to make. And the same thing for Mr. Pitts. He's been teaching 7th grade math, at least since I was in 7th grade. So again, they know their curriculum really well, which helps them to be able to make those in real time adjustments for students. So those pieces that you're asking about, that's what we're honing in on with the standard analysis to figure out what is happening. Why are we seeing that?
But it's not just missing module 7 or 6 or 5, as you know. Can you go back to that slide though, on page 7 out of 13? Because
Show me your 7.
it's your ELA performance. So these are the kids that are currently in 5th grade, and you know, I heard it from you and I heard it from Elizabeth that, you know, COVID is to blame for why students aren't doing well.
So we can say that when we see a regional dip, perhaps we can attribute that to the impact of COVID. This shift, I would not say from year to year is a COVID thing, because they were not.
It can't be COVID because these kids were in 1st grade, so they missed their last 2 months. So in 2nd grade, they had a class size between 10 and 12. They had the most individualized instruction that any student has had. So in 2nd grade, should have been a great year. 3rd grade, we went back to, so they missed an hour, but also things were lost, so really they didn't miss any instruction. So the 3rd grade data is great. But 4th grade is horrendous, and it's not because they missed out a module, because that's ELA. So what happens there? So it's not missing module 4 through 7. So what happens? Like, and then if you take, you know, if you look at, you know, the 6th grade data, what happened with 3rd, 4th, and 5th?
So some of that is absolutely teacher driven. You can see at some grade levels, for example, last year we had some turnover in our 6th grade, and you can see the impact of that in the data for those students who are now in 7th grade. Some of it is that. And again, that's what we're using the data to hone in on right now to identify exactly what it is. I also would venture to guess, and I have not been on this side of the walls working here for that long, I would venture to guess that as the data has come in year over year, they have perhaps looked at one data set or another to say, this is what it was, and maybe, you know, we go back to all those circles, they're saying, okay, I think this is the problem, let's fix this, without looking at all of it together and holistically, would be my guess. But without having been here for that, I couldn't tell you what that has looked like over the last few years. But it is a priority to fix that together. And I think also, specifically speaking to our 4th grade team, because I've been working with them, they are very receptive to this, of saying, okay, thank you for finding that in the data, how do we fix it? Now that we know that this is what one of our problems is, how do we go back and fix that right now in real time? I don't think that any teacher wants their students to not grow. I don't think that is the case. And I think that some of our staff in those grades where you're seeing the drops are busting their butts year over year. And then it feeds into, again, going back to John Hattie's research, into that notion of teacher burnout when they're not feeling like all of my efforts are making a difference for my students. So we're trying to use that data also to build that collective teacher efficacy from our staff so that they see the impact of their work to then re-energize and help them move forward and tackle making changes, because they're not easy. If you have to completely redo your curriculum, that's not easy, that's a lot of work. So we want our staff to know that what they're working on is purposeful and intentional and going to make that positive impact. So to be determined, when we identify what that is, we will absolutely be sure to shout it from the rooftops as we're fixing it.
So I'll just say, obviously I share concern, but I'm very heartened by, the clear strategy that you have here. And I'm excited to see what the leadership does with all of this information and the way that you analyze it. So I just really wanted to say thank you. I'm very heartened by this. Obviously am concerned, but as Jolene said, we know that it wasn't necessarily a problem that either of you were at the home for. But I just think that this is excellent, and I love the fact that you have the regular check-ins built in terms of going back to the data and seeing what's working and what's not. So I just wanted to say thank you for that. Thank you.
Jen, when you get that big January data update, I know it won't be immediate, but even if you don't present it, could you maybe possibly send it out to us just so we can kind of, maybe in a similar fashion, so we can compare and see where we're at?
So now that this template is established, I would say that this can be a regular process for you all that we can update at mid-year and end of year and just continue to grow what is in here with those cohorts. So starting point 40, what did we get, 43 pages? So we'll aim for 50 at the mid-year point.
Okay, and I have one more question, moving the last one. So we're obviously looking at data across the years for the students. Ultimately, I think most students would say that their goal is to graduate, and our graduation rates last year were not good either. So we're hearing a lot of like curriculum supports and things like that, but from my experience, a lot of kids who don't graduate, there are like socioeconomic, social factors. Are we doing things to support students so that we can get them across the finish line, ultimately?
So everything working collectively in tandem, I would say that that is largely falling under our MTSS work right now. So we've onboarded with Panorama this year that pulls all of our data into one platform, easy for our staff to see and access. So at every tier 1, tier 2 meeting, they're logging into Panorama and looking to use that to identify those students. And I would say that if you walk into my office in the middle of the day and any one of these folks are in there, that's what we're talking about, is how we're getting students to that point. I think Mr. Smiley and I today were just doing that with a student in middle school who is not on track. What do we need to do? What options are there? How do we brainstorm? It rolled into a later conversation with Mrs. Herbst and then Mr. Wallace, and getting things in place. So now we have some action steps to take to help to re-engage, hopefully, that student.
I know that this is icky and this is not fun for anybody, but I do want you guys to know that I appreciate all of you, because I know that this is a huge task that you are taking on to shift to a data-driven mindset. So thank you, and thank all of you, because I know that it's a ton of hours and a ton of work, and I appreciate it.
For our entire team. Our entire
Everybody.
team has been working really hard
Yep.
on using data to inform what we're doing with every single staff member. And again, I left our October superintendent conference day feeling really invigorated by the work of our staff. So 35-year teaching veterans were working so hard to analyze, what does this mean? Why is it here? Where is it in our curriculum? And I think that that is the commitment that when we talk about why we as parents choose to live here, that's the commitment that our staff has to wanting to do what's right for our students.
100%.
So I think we all feel that way. Thank you for the commitment that you've made to it. And I just want to say, because I think Jolene, you started this off, it's hard to look at, but as from sitting on the other side of this table, you can recognize that it's not always easily comparable data. So we've seen, at least my time on the board, a huge stretch of different ways to look at some of the same things and some of different things. So I think although it might be difficult to swallow right now, I think it's a starting point. And so, you know, in a year from now or 5 years from now, this information that you're bringing forward could be very different. So, you know, first steps. So thank you for what you're doing. We appreciate it. We should clap for Joan. And this 3 presentation is actually longer than our like last 2 put together.
We have no more presentations.
Okay. All right, we're gonna move forward if everybody's ready. Okay, moving on to C1, the regular meeting minutes from November 1st. Could I have a motion, please? Mrs. Kaiser, and a second by Mrs. Dingman. Any questions, corrections? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, moving on. Please, as the board, I would take all of the financial reports, D1 through 4. Unless somebody needs to pull them. Mrs. Bliss, second by Mrs. Kaiser. Questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
I would like to make a motion for E2, 1 through 27.
I'm sorry, can you say
All
that
of
one?
E2.
All of E2, okay.
I'll make a second.
Second, thank you, so,
Decker.
yep. So it's gonna be just E2?
Okay.
Okay, any questions about that group? So that would be all of the appointments on the consent agenda. When you're ready.
Mrs. Decker?
Yes.
Mrs. Bliss?
Yes.
Mrs. Digman?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mrs. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Foltz?
Yes.
And Mrs. Madigan?
Yes, thank you. Okay, I'll take a motion for E3, just 3? Okay, can I have a second? Mrs. Dingman? You could put repeat under this, you want? Okay, questions on E3, the resignation portion of the consent agenda? When you're ready.
Yep. Mrs. Foltz?
Yes.
Mrs. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman?
Yes.
Mrs. Bliss?
Yes.
Mrs. Decker?
No.
Mrs. Madigan?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, I'll take
I'll make a motion for E4.
perfect, thank you. And a second by Mrs. Folds. Okay, any questions on the CSE, CPSE recommendations? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? I'm gonna do a voice vote 'cause
There we
by
go,
itself.
there we go.
All right. I'll take anything for F, all of F, some of F. Anybody? Mrs. Kaiser?
I will make a motion for F1 through 13.
Can I have a second for that? All right, Mrs. Decker? Any questions?
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted, before I ask the question, when was our last regular board meeting?
Should be the first. Cause that's what we just approved the meetings for, or minutes for.
Yeah, it was
Oh,
November 1st.
okay, it was the first.
Was that your question
Hold
or?
No,
Do you want me to ask my question?
I do not. Yeah, go
Well, you
ahead.
have one for yours. I have a question regarding the senior class overnight field trip. How many of those students are not able to attend because they can't financially afford it? Do we know?
I don't know. I can dig into some details on that senior trip.
Some of that, you know, you hate to hear that students aren't going because they can't afford it, and, you know, some won't
Sure.
necessarily step up. So, you wanna make sure that all kids have an opportunity. And it's difficult to fundraise, let's face, when you're fundraising with the same, you're competing against everybody else. So, you know, there's other opportunities for kids, for some of these items that are on here, to have it funneled through a different funding source.
Yep.
That not necessarily the class would have to
Correct.
absorb.
Right.
So I don't mean to speak like over you or anything, but I think Jolene might know as well, for parents of seniors last year, there were options for students that needed possibly financial help or something like that in order to attend that trip. I don't know if the class was very small, so I don't know if it's the same thing every
It
time.
said
And I
that
don't know-
40 there's 40 kids attending.
Yeah, it says number of anticipated students is 40, and the anticipated cost is $550. And I do know that they had mentioned there was help, what that looked like, how many students they were able to provide it to if they needed it. But again, I think something that Nancy kind of mentioned is, and I don't know how you resolve this, but you might have kids that want to go but aren't comfortable with saying, hey, I can't
Right.
afford to go. So for the district, or our administrators or somebody to kind of maybe take that initiative to
Those are like two separate
slide
things,
in
yeah.
those conversations of
Yep.
well, if you
40%
could, or-
are economically disadvantaged, that the data was given to us by Jen, so.
That's a good point.
And there's 58 kids, and if 40 are going, then maybe some of those aren't going due to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's a starting point, that cost number is a starting point, right? So, some of the fundraising carries over from their, high school careers. We also utilize Arts and Ed, Arts and Education, which is a BOCE service. Depending on the type of programs that the students might be participating in during that trip, some of those costs could be deferred based on the Arts and Ed's cost. We have some grant opportunities as well through our 21st Century Grant, because some of these activities take place outside of the school day. So that oftentimes that number isn't reflected yet in that cost. So that would be deferred down as we get a little closer to those activities.
Jolene,
Thank you.
I answered my own question, thank you. But I did have a question about the donation. It says that there's a donation to the 8th grade class. Is the 8th grade class still going on a trip? I think it's been a few years maybe?
It has been a few years,
It's
and
a
I
significant
believe
donation.
it is a significant donation.
They're
We-
supposed to be. They're supposed to be?
Yes, yeah, we have advisors this year with the intention of going,
Great.
I
Great.
believe, to Washington DC.
New York City.
New York City, I believe incorrectly.
The city's a mix.
Right, so those have been the two
Yeah.
typical ones that our 8th grade have gone on, is either New York City or Washington. So
The last time was before COVID.
it was,
Jackson was in 8th grade that year, and he was really bummed. No 8th grade trip.
right.
Any other questions?
Just a comment from me, with the budget development calendar, I won't be here for a few of those just because I have already indicated I had board meetings of my own to attend. I.e. the one in January as well.
Okay.
One of the ones in January.
One, just one.
Okay.
They're all important to me though, Mr. Van Orman, you know that.
Any other questions? Okay, when you're ready.
Mrs. Bliss,
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser,
Yes.
Mrs. Folds,
Yes.
Mrs. Decker,
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman,
Yes.
Mrs. Allen,
Yes.
and Mrs. Madigan.
Yes. Thank you. Mr. Van Orman.
Right, so you should see, I'm just flipping through the attached administrative reports. Tonight, both Mrs. Herbst and Mr. Taylor are not here. They are at a presentation regarding elementary special education opportunities and programs. I thought that was a relevant task for them to engage in at this time, in the hopes and expectations they would bring back some of that information. And again, in that spirit of sharing and gathering resources and information from other places. How are they doing things? How are they viewing some of the challenges that they might be seeing? So that's where they are tonight. You'll see, the rest of the information through our administrative updates. The tax collection report really connects back up to what you just approved in the new business, F11. So one is an action item, which was the approval, F11, and this one is really just more for informational purposes. So I put in my transmittal last week. Any of the uncollected tax amounts would go back to the county. The county makes the school whole, and then those taxes are added on to the property taxes that'll come out in January. So even though they're not 100% collected, we will be made whole on those numbers, and then it'll be the task of the counties to collect those funds.
I thought it was fantastic to see that we collected 93%.
Yeah, it's a nice increase.
Nice
Absolutely.
increase. Of fun. Can I make a couple comments about the administrative reports?
Please.
First, I wanted to say that I love Mary Beth's, and just sharing like some of our administrative team and different departments and how they really helped out in different areas of the district, and some of you guys too with help with the junior supper. It was just really fun to see and hear about, and thank you guys. I love it. And there was a couple of your updates mentioned, and unfortunately I wasn't able to make it. Rachel's challenge. I just kind of wanted to see or ask like how overall that went. Just a little bit of feedback on the event itself.
It was received very well. We did it right when they came back from break that morning in first and second period. And the speaker was very well spoken, and the kids did a really good job, and they did reflections. And in the cafeteria, there's a banner. And then they not only had Rachel's challenge, they also had a training for kids that wanted to be part of the Rachel's movement. So they did that at 1 o'clock. And so now if you get a chance to walk in the cafeteria, there's a big banner where the kids could sign the banner on that they made a pledge they want to do that. And it's part of our we're starting to get programs in to work with different things with students. And we've started to contact different organizations, so we've given them a big round of well-rounded education of all kinds of different topics, and this just was our start. It started very well, and they just did, they handled it so well, and it was just a great time and event.
Awesome.
Can I just add, that was actually brought to us by one of our students.
Really?
Yeah, from the Zach presentation, the third place, tied for second. And then we just connected her with Ms. Quackenbush, and they worked together to get the program off the ground, and
Kudos to her. That's
brand new student came to me with a binder full of like a proposal, and it was like one of the greatest things I ever read.
Yeah.
Let me get you to someone to work, and they had it Monday, and
How was the 1 o'clock meeting? Was there some decent?
It was also very well. They had a big round robin forum, and the kids were excited, and it was just positive energy.
Was there a good number of kids that participated?
It was a heavy topic, but they handled it very, very well.
Yeah.
It was very good.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
I really love that we're bringing programs in. I know we did, was it Sweetheart to Heroes? Did we do that last year?
Yeah, we're still using Sweethearts and
Having
Heroes.
the kids get those exposures to like, you can have feelings and we can, like, you can express them, and just that like positive energy that they might not get otherwise. I think it's great for them. I have a couple teenagers. We know how much they like to talk about feelings, but I think it's really great just having that exposure for the kids. So thank you guys for coordinating that and getting it going for them.
Mr. Welcher, I loved in your report that you mentioned that to ensure athletic growth, that you plan to have a day where 5th and 6th graders can tour.
Yep, so it's gonna be next Tuesday, and Jay Wanick and Mrs. Keith agreed to kind of give the kids a tour, so basically brief summary of what athletics entails. They're gonna bop around to different practices. The coaches will say, hey, this is what wrestling's like, this is what basketball's like. We'll get to watch a few minutes of it, give them a snack, and just get them home on bus 4:45.
Yeah, I think
That's
that's
gonna be
good.
next Tuesday. They don't know about it yet, but it's gonna be next Tuesday. Monica and Keith know about it. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, so just before we wrap up, I just wanna say welcome to Danielle again, so. Probably longest meeting so far this year, you get to start with it. And, you know, if she's watching, thank you to Mary Beth, because, she did an amazing job, so.
I don't think she's watching.
Why wouldn't she be watching?
The nice thing is you
I'm sure she
approved
is.
Mary Beth tonight as one of our capital project vote inspectors.
Yeah.
So,
We'll
next
see you
week she'll
soon.
still be with us, next week.
But, we're very excited to have you, and I think that, she's left you in a good spot, hopefully, so. Okay.
We
If not-
have, the other business is the Board of Education goals. Were we going to say anything or recognize? 'Cause it's on the agenda.
Yeah, I hadn't planned on it. Do you want,
No.
is that a suggestion to read it, if you wanna?
No, just, it was just an agenda item.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure what to do, cause I originally thought that it needed a vote, and then we talked about it, and it didn't, so.
Right, just an awareness piece.
So all of you that missed the fun workshop, obviously everyone else in the room, we did establish, Board of Education goals that will hopefully align with, what we're trying to accomplish, and try to actually, get some hard targets on paper, so that we can show some progress and growth within this group. We're all really diligent and hard workers, so even though we're starting a little late, I think we're gonna be able to be successful with it, so. If you have any questions, stop a board member, I'm sure they'd love to talk about it with you. That being said, I take a motion to move into executive for, a negotiations matter, please. Mrs. Kaiser and Mrs. Foltz, thank you very much. Gwenna, way to stay through the whole thing.
Yeah.
You get extra points.
Dedicated.
Yeah.
One each, is that what this is?
And you guys don't subscribe to it, and I'll say why.